Hello, Allie. Allie Edwards is my guest today, and I am so over the moon excited about this because it's full circle for me. So, a little backstory, as many of you know, before I went full on with my art career, I spent those formative years of my children's childhood doing scrapbooking. Very passionate about, still have a very heart-centered connection to it with the paper and all the ephemera and all the goods. And Allie Edwards was a prominent figure in my life at that time, whether she knew it or not. That's the fun thing. She didn't even know. I've been a big admirer, a big fan for a couple decades now. So welcome, Allie, to the Made Remarkable podcast.
Thank you, Kelly. That was thank you. That was so nice. I can see your joy. That's nice. Thank you.
I do. I feel ultimate joy. When you shared my book that I had published a couple years ago on your Instagram, I thought I would fall over and die. I'm like, oh, Allie, yes. Thank you so much.
Your color vibes speak to me intensely. So I have like a side joy of doing mixed media stuff and art journaling that I kind of flow in and out of. Like there'll be some times during the year where I'll be like, oh, I'm totally into it and I'll do it for a couple months. And then I have other work I have to do. So it's always balancing that, the creativity part of it. But the color, I mean, even your background, I'm just like, yes.
I just created this because these are my favorite colors. And
they're very yummy.
Something fun besides my busy shelf.
Yeah, I know. See, I'm like, this is it. The people, this is what you get.
I know, but it looks like you're just filled with joy back there with all the fun things you've been working on over the last
yes. Well, I'm
2
also
decades of doing this industry, huh?
Decades. Like I started scrapbooking in 2002. That was when I first started. So my son Simon's going to be 21 this month. And that was the reason why I started. And then it became a business within a couple of years, but I am not an intentional business owner in terms of like, I did not have a dream of this. I don't know what I went to school to be an attorney. So that is my background actually in American history and literature. And I still love that also. And I love reading and writing. And I ended up actually going back to school and got a graphic design degree. And so that I think is more in line with my like true skills and gifts probably. And that kind of led into, the story that we're probably going to talk about today.
Yes, we're going to talk about it because this is a fun thing about like sometimes we don't expect to end up where we're at, but look at the beautiful life that it provides for us. So we can talk about those ups and downs and how you ended up here now with your own business running courses. You've had product lines and a real major force to be reckoned with in the scrapbooking and craft industry, and still going strong today, even though, as we were speaking a minute ago, that industry's changed a lot over the years. So I would love if you tell our listeners a bit about how it like all took off in the beginning. Like you said, you were scrapbooking because you wanted to create something for your sons.
That's correct. Yep. I wanted to make a baby book for him, some sort of baby book, some sort of documentation, something, right? Maybe a little bit like, oh, this is what I think I'm supposed to do. It was maybe a little bit of that. And I actually just went to a craft store with my mom on the Oregon coast and went in there and I was like, I want to start doing this, and looked at baby books, and most of the baby books that I saw at that point in time, so this would have been 2002, were really cutesy, like a lot of ducks and stuff. I would not choose that for myself, which everybody gets to choose their own thing, but that wasn't necessarily my style. And so I ended up doing a little bit of research, and I was online looking for communities or just to see what other things maybe scrapbooking could look like. And I came across, and this is like pre-Facebook, pre-social, this is before any of that stuff, which is everything now.
Back in the days when we used to blog.
Yeah, this was blog time. This was actually even probably I started blogging in 2004. So for me, this is still pre-blog, but it's like chat rooms. And so I found a website that was called 2 Peas in a Bucket, which
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, it's not around anymore. And what I saw on there were people doing scrapbooking and memory keeping with a more modern aesthetic. So a little bit more focus on the photos and photography and taking cool pictures mixed with words that, not just the product stuff, but actual interesting design parts to it too. I don't know. So that definitely spoke to me, and I saw what people were doing and I was like, I'm going to do this. This looks fun. And, I was a stay-at-home mom with a husband that was working and had a graphic design degree, and was like, maybe I'll go back to work, maybe not, maybe I will just be a stay-at-home mom and I'll have lots of kids and, scrapbook for fun. And that was really when I started, that was it. And I started, when I first started, I loved it so much. I was doing it every day. Like great level of satisfaction from
Mhm.
getting photos printed and writing a little story and organizing it on the page, and just like it filled me up on the inside and gave me something to do. Maybe, I mean, I had an infant, so that was also something to do, obviously. um
Squeezed in between
yeah,
those
squeezed in
nap
between.
times.
Yeah, it actually, that kind of plays into part of the story later on. So we'll try to circle back to the child part at that time with my son, and it ended up being diagnosed with autism, and young, like two and a
And
half.
mind you, I've been following you long enough that I remember that.
Yeah, it changed my life in a million different ways, and cannot imagine it without it. And he's the best thing. Like, he just is the best, but lots of fear, lots of all that mixed into that.
Mhm.
And actually, the fact that I was scrapbooking helped in some of the conversations that we had with the doctors, because I was able to say, look, I've recorded, that he had all of these words, and then some of those words have been lost now. And
Mm.
so things like that. Anyway, that was a piece of that
It's
story.
okay, it's an important part of the story because he's the reason you started and probably a big reason why you've continued, huh?
I think so. Majorly, majorly. Yes. And really, for me, what it's been about over the years, he was my only child for 7 years. So I had a second child, Anna, who's now 13, 14. So that was my focus. Those were the stories that I was telling. So I told a lot of stories about Simon, stories about myself, stories about myself and my husband. That was my focus for a long time. And for the first couple of years, I was just sharing online. So just in the community, sharing, lots of sharing, kind of getting noticed, I would say, in that
Mhm.
space of people commenting and emulating some of the things that I was making, which, I think I'm a teacher at heart, in terms of like, if you see what I'm doing and you would like to do it exactly the same, you should do it exactly the same, because I hope that you learn something in that process, right? Like in scrapbooking, nobody cares if you're copying somebody else's something. Like, it just doesn't, your
I don't even
family's,
care in my art
yeah,
courses.
your family, that's how you learn, right? Is by doing it. So from there, with that little bit of recognition, I think then there were big scrapbooking magazines at that time, and that was kind of the
Mhm.
beginning of me doing it in a more professional way. So I wrote a monthly article for a magazine. I ended up writing a couple of books for that the magazine was the publisher, books about scrapbooking, which I loved, because I was like, oh, I can write more, right? Here's more writing, more opportunity to do the writing and the step by step, and like I did all of that part of those books in addition to the project. So some people that have done those, other people write for them. They have copywriters and other stuff. And so I liked doing that part of it. So that was, the magazine was kind of
You
the beginning.
I remember you were, like, on design teams,
I was going to say that. Yeah.
you were always featured, it was really fun to see, like, yeah, you had an aesthetic too that was pretty easy to pick out. There's, like, a clean graphic style,
Definitely.
which probably comes from your graphic design
Yep.
background.
Very linear. I'm very visually linear, I think, too. Like, that's
Mhm.
just how my brain works. Yeah. So design teams, just opportunities. And again, still, even in those early stages, I wasn't like, I'm going to build a business around this, right? It actually was never really like that for me. It just kind of continued to evolve, where I was like, oh, here's another opportunity. Yes, I'm interested in taking that. Yes, I will do this one. Yes, I will write that book, or yes, I will come to that event and teach a class, or, it just kind of started like that, to where, would you like to design a product? Yes, I would like to do that. And so those kind of things, were that growth was happening parallel at the same time that my husband at the time was ready to be done with his job and run for office. So he was an Oregon House of Representatives in Oregon, and then a state senator too. But it was kind of like over a couple of year period, I got to the point where I was making enough money. So I have to think about how many years that was. 2005 is when I say that my official business date, when I actually probably got registered as a business. So before that, I just
Okay.
looked, more of an independent contractor, where I was not making enough that it really mattered. I mean, probably technically it matters. So no,
Yes,
get
but
an accountant.
you just claim it as individual income. Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
Yeah, up to
get
a
an
certain
accountant.
point, and then you're like, okay, this is probably not that anymore. Yeah. So what happened for me is, I just ended up, I had lots of different partnerships. So I did work for the magazine, and I did, I would partner with people. I would license my artwork to a digital company that would sell it, and then I licensed it to a physical company that sold products briefly. But I just had lots of different partnerships that kind of came together that created the income, including teaching classes too. So that was a big piece of that for a long time. And that went on for probably, I don't even, 10 years or longer, of just me by myself, right? Going along, doing all the stuff, doing the customer service, getting all the emails, never sending out product. I never I never did that. That was not something that I ever wanted to do. I still don't do now. So I partner with a company now that actually manufactures and distributes all of the products because that is not of much interest to me.
Right.
I like to just be able to do the creative part if I can.
So you don't have
So
to be shipping all day long.
I'm not shipping. Yeah. I think that, if it gets to the point someday here where we need to pivot and do that, like we would be able to figure it out, I think. But the partnership that I have now, which came about probably about 6 or 7 years ago, was somebody that came to me and said, what if we pull all of these disparate things you have going on? What if we pull them all together under one umbrella and we would do the customer service, and we as in they would do the customer service, they would do the shipping and the manufacturing and provide some design work help so that it's not me doing all of the graphic design for all of the things. And I said yes. And that's what we've been doing now for the last 6 years. Is we partnered with a company called Inked, which is Studio Calico is the scrapbooking company originally.
Oh, you are partnered with Studio Calico.
Yeah, it's so so Inked is their overarching. I'm trying to think of the overarching business name.
It's the umbrella of the business.
Yes, it's the umbrella. And so Studio Calico is how they started. But
Oh,
then,
believe me, I know they took quite a bit of my paycheck,
Yes.
my husband's paycheck.
Yes.
For a good few years there.
Yes.
My love will always be with Studio Calico.
Yes.
So this is a good conversation.
Yes. Yeah. Well, what happened was April, who owns Studio Calico, she was the one that approached me and said, what do you think about, bringing this all under one umbrella? And I was like, I think that I'm ready to do something right, to bring it all together in one place. And it had been working fine for me, but there was kind of nowhere else I could go, or nowhere else I was going to go unless I wanted to do the manufacturing or those sorts of things, which I really didn't necessarily want to do. And so with her, that was the beginning. I was the first person that they partnered with in that way. And now they've done it with a wide variety of people, more of an influencer marketing company. So they partner with people in a variety of different niches, I would say, where they are creating products for them and offering customer service support and doing some of those other things to create products for influencers, which I'm still like, whatever.
Well, I mean, if we want to call it an influencer, somebody who just happens to have a really good idea and a big following.
Yes. So that's where we're at. And that's what we've been doing for the last 6 years. And that's kind of been a giant, grand experiment of growing together and learning together and figuring out how do we make this work, and lots and lots and lots of ups and downs and trials and successes, and everything that you can imagine has been a piece of that adventure. And it's been successful too. So that's also been, a really positive outcome.
I've always certainly back in the 2000s when I was always business minded, I always wanted to have my own business. But at that point, I'm like, okay, well, first, I was originally an artist. A fine artist. Everyone's an artist who's making the way you're making, for sure. But I was a fine artist. Then I had the family. My story is almost identical to yours. I had my first son. It was actually 1998. And I'm like, I want to make a baby album, but I don't want to do the traditional thing. And I stumbled into scrapbooking as well. Yeah. So it took me a couple more years before I found the whole online forum. But yes, it was that. And then, of course, once I discovered Studio Calico, I was no more good. I still have some of their stuff even to this day. And I treasure it because they're my favorite stuff that I ever purchased during that decade of the 2000s. So yeah, it was the same kind of venture into it. But it has evolved a lot. And there are a lot of ups and downs with how I see that the entire scrapbooking industry's changed a lot more to bullet journals, daily journaling, more simplified in some ways, maybe even. We were really elaborate at times.
Yeah, I think it's the way that I look at it, it's really more kind of the evolution of memory keeping, right? There's still scrapbooking in the traditional sense of someone taking, I'm looking at my desk, I'm like, somebody taking a 12 by 12 sheet of cardstock and building something on top, right? There is still a segment of the community that does that, but there's just been so many other things along the way, like mini books. Probably when you were around, I don't know if people were doing mini books then. So things, just little books that are still scrapbooks, with photos. And I guess photos would be the distinguisher, right? In terms of what we would consider a scrapbook, maybe photos and some story. That's the part that I care about the most. Yeah. But it
is memory keeping then. If you really think about how we track through our memory keeping, I like that you distinguish that.
Yeah, I think for people that decorate planners, that's specifically what I'm thinking of, or that are using planners as a memory keeping tool, that is memory keeping. It can be, scrapbooking and memory keeping kind of, it's just all kind of a mesh together. I'm pretty much of the opinion that whatever documentation you do is worthwhile. I'm definitely somebody that writes a little bit more, and I like to have Mine is more reflective often. And I'm somebody that includes both the highs and the lows. So rather than it just being, a scrapbook of the highlights, I want to tell the different kinds of stories of our life to normalize it for myself and for our family too, of that this is what, everybody has highs and lows in their life, right? It's not just birthdays and Christmases, and which those are all fun. They're nice to scrapbook too, but I'm way more interested in the everyday life kinds of stuff.
Yeah, for me as well. And I've watched that journey with you. I mean, I feel a little bit like a voyeur, so I don't want it to sound like
well,
too
you don't
creepy, but
have to feel like that. What I always say is I put it out there, right? So
Yeah.
whatever you know about me is because I've shared that.
And I love that about just seeing, I mean, like even as recent, I was just mentioning how thrilling it was for me to see Simon and all of his Star Wars adventures, partly because I'm a Star Wars nerd. I have been watching all the Star Wars episodes, every last one of them. We do that. I'm a mom of 3 boys, so of course.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's just fun to see like that joy, and just even the transformation in your family as you have a
Yep.
blended family now. And
Yep. That's a huge part of the story. I mean, Star Wars is a huge part of the story. So Simon, that's one of his, I would say that is his passion. So Star Wars is his passion. So anything related to Star Wars, books, movies, the whole thing, he is up to date and knows exactly what's going on. So we watch a lot, yes, same sort of thing.
So he and I could have a little debate over which one's the best one.
Oh, he would love to have that conversation with you. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then you could talk about which order you should actually watch them in, because that's another thing. And then he would want to talk about, whether you've seen any of the newer shows that are on HBO, like Andor and
that
Obi-Wan.
are on Disney Plus.
Yes.
Oh yes. Can I tell you, Simon, Andor's my favorite.
That's because Andor is the best. Andor is so good.
Well, that's because Rogue One was the best. So anyhow, we could go into
good job, Kellee. Kellee, you're in.
I am in. Like, I just I could see, I know my son's a little bit older than my first son is a little older than Simon. So it is fun to watch this whole thing, and knowing that you've documented all of that and also shared publicly the trials, the divorce, meeting a new love of your life, having a new family, his children, your children, and all your adventures that you're on now. I haven't really kept up with it's making me feel like, okay, maybe there is part of me that needs to get back into that memory documenting. It doesn't have to be the way it used to be.
100% does not. I mean, there's so many different ways you can do it. You can do photo books. You can do whatever is
I like the writing part like you. Yeah, me too. I love the writing part.
Yeah. Me too. Lots of people. So another thing you might be interested in too is like notebooks. People are like traveler's notebook style of scrapbooking. That's a whole other, I have a whole bunch of those too. That's another way I think that people have been approaching it. That is not the same as that traditional, you have to make it up from the beginning sort of thing. But one of my things with scrapbooking and all along has been, it's been a tool for me to make sense of my life and to celebrate. So a lot of what I do, especially with Simon, is celebrating milestones along the way, right? I remember when he was little, after he was diagnosed, when he was 2.5, I stopped reading all baby books. I was like, I'm not going to read any more baby books because these baby books are not going to apply to this story, this chapter that we are embarking on. But that was a very healthy thing for me, I think. So then it was just focused on his development, right? And celebrating everything as he has, hit different milestones later than other kids, or not at all in certain cases too. It's just been such an opportunity for me to carve out the actual story, right? The actual story is that he's amazing and can't imagine, life without him. And how many things can we celebrate, right? Like that's the actual story of Simon. And Simon brings so much joy to so many people. And that also, like, that part has been amazing.
Yeah, right.
Community. Yeah, like people like you that seriously have been watching him since he was an infant,
Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of weird, but at the same time, it's also, I think there's a part of me that has felt, and I'm very thankful to the community for this, but has felt buoyed up along the way, with him, to have people that when I'm like saying, when I tell a story about him, something that shifted or whatever, and I always use this hashtag Go Simon Go. It's like people say that now back to me all the time. And it's just such a nice, I think that has been a really, I'm very thankful to the people that have watched this story for that kind of feedback. It is not easy to be a parent of a special needs kid. Like there's just so many parts of it that are really challenging. And so having that little bit of support from people that I don't know is kind of magical too.
And it is. I mean, that's where the whole Made Remarkable idea flourished for me, is just seeing, that each of us have our own story, our own path, the businesses we create, the lives that we create, and looking at it remarkable. Even when it's not, it's still remarkable. It's still
100%.
amazing. and
Yep.
watching just even your personal journey and where you've been and what you've created since then. And I, you really sense that evolution of joy for you even over the years.
Yeah.
And I love the community that you've created around it too. And I know that it's ever changing, but one thing that seems to stay the same is our one little word. And I want to ask you about this because I feel like you were the originator of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? I never think of it like this is my idea. Like that's definitely not how I think about it. And I started doing it in 2006. So like the concept of let's pick a word instead of, having resolutions or anything else. I think I'm somebody that likes to have something to focus on, but I don't need a big long list of things that I'm like trying to fix about myself, right? Like, or so having one word, I did it for 5 years. Just each year I'd be like, oh, this is my word, I'm going to do this. And I didn't do any documentation alongside that. But then in 2011, I started running a workshop. And when I started running a workshop, then I was doing monthly documentation about my experience with my word and like making it much more alive for
Mhm.
myself, because each month I was just coming back, not like giant project, this has to take tons of time, but remembering what my word is, that helped to remember what my word is. And it helped me because it gave me lots of opportunities to write, to do crafty little creative things. We do mixed media sometimes in there. So that's a class that has continued on now where it's in the 12th year or however many years. And I did that by
Yeah.
myself for 10 years. Yeah. 10 years. I mean, so 12 years. So for 12 years, every single month, I've done something about whatever word I've been living. And sometimes that is when I actually stop to think about that. Like those are the things that I'm like, oh my God, that's actually been that. It's been that long every month. Yeah. I love having a word though. So my word actually this year is joy. And I'm just
Yes, embody
trying to
all
bring
of
it
that.
in, trying to feel it, trying
So
to,
when you started doing the one little word, was it something that someone else gave you the idea, or do you feel like that was just something you did for yourself?
I honestly don't remember. So,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm like, I'm not going to ever claim that there's
Okay,
somebody.
because I've been adamant in the past that you're the originator.
Oh, well, thanks, Kelly. I just don't know if that's true.
I
And
mean, I can see like where does the unoriginal idea come from?
yes. So I know that there's a whole community, like a faith-based
Mhm.
community, and which is not necessarily, that's not as, not a part of my experience, but there is a whole faith-based arena and somebody that had written a book that's like, living with a word, it's very like
Okay.
biblically focused, which is not, again, that's not
Yeah,
where I'm
one
coming
little
from.
word
And
is not that.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
It's
it can
personal.
be if you want it to be, but that's not like if you take the workshop from me, I'm not coming at it from a faith-based or religious, just
Mhm.
to be,
Just personal
clear.
growth.
Yeah, just personal growth. And so I've looked that up before, and that the person that wrote that, it was around the same time, like they were writing the book around the same time. I don't know.
Good
Today, everybody
ideas. The
talks about
muses
it.
come and they just put them in everybody's
Yeah.
minds as it was time to be part of the world.
I think it was what I needed at that particular point in time in 2006, definitely like had been blogging for 2 years, and 2006, is that before Facebook too? That's when I try to remember these things. I don't
I
even
don't
know
think
what
Facebook
year.
really became a thing publicly until maybe 2008 or 9.
Okay, that's what I thought. So it's pre that too. So it would have been
Yeah.
just me blogging about, writing about it, and sharing about what I was interested in.
And now, whether people know that that's something you've been doing forever and that you run workshops or not, everyone loves the ritual of picking a word for the year.
This year seems like even more, like as I scroll through Instagram, I'm just
It's
like,
just
it's like which I think is
every
great, because I really do think that it is a fantastic way to live, actually, is really what it is, like to live throughout the year, to have something specific that you're focusing on, rather than feeling like, we all have things we want to change about or change
right.
or adjust or improve or whatever word you want to throw in there. I really see it as like a getting back to myself, like an uncovering of who my true self actually is versus, who my parents or what I was taught growing up. It's continued to be like an uncovering of all of that each
Yeah.
year as I've gone on. I'm like, okay, this is, another layer gets peeled back of, I actually don't care about that thing, but I care about this thing, like that, me as an individual person. So that's been a big part of it for me. It's
It's
also been something that has helped me through all of those challenges that you have referenced earlier, like going through a divorce. And, all through that time, I was scrapbooking and I was running workshops and I was doing all of the things that I still do now. And I really feel like documenting pieces of that journey were really helpful for me. And I am not the person that's like, I hate you, like it was not, those are not the kind of stories that I would tell. But I would talk about how it was hard, right? Like today was hard and this was hard. And here I am
Yeah.
now with, 2 little kids, and what am I doing? And can I support myself? And all of those kinds of questions, which
And
were
that
like,
was a question I was curious about, was the business space that you had created enough to sustain you and carry you through and
it
support you?
was, yes. And so I felt very, very lucky for that fact, that I was established enough that it was going to continue supporting us. And it was one of the things that I was probably the most nervous about. Like, even I had an amicable divorce. So my ex-husband and I are still friends, and we do things together with both of our families, but it was very challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely looked at you as a very brave soul, continuing on and showing up through all of that. I mean, you have through all of your challenges.
Yeah. And I think so part of that is interesting because having the business, like I had to,
You
right?
had
There, especially because I needed to have an income. I couldn't just stop doing it. I mean, I'm sure I could have pivoted and like gotten a real job. That's my
Once you've
finger
done this, it's
quotation.
hard to imagine doing a real job.
I would never do a real job. Oh my God, I don't want to do a real job. But yeah, the flexibility that I had already built into the way that I was working, I've always worked from home. That has been huge. So I've always had, been able to organize my own schedule and make all of those kinds of adjustments within my working life. So that made things easier. And it also was the kind of thing where, because we shared time with the kids, when the kids were gone, I did a lot of work. When the kids were gone, I would work as much as I could so that when they came back, then I could do more of my mom things and have more flexibility in my schedule. But I was really scared, like in the very beginning, especially, I was really scared about whether or not the money was going to work out, and, would we be okay? And, there was lots of pieces to that story too.
Feel like there's still a lot of ups and downs and uncertainty with the way, I mean, everything.
Not financially.
No, you feel pretty secure with that, even with this looming recession and all the BS that they want to like put over our head.
I'm always conscientious. I would say that. So I think that we will probably be making some changes this year to pull back a little bit, just as a protective measure to make sure that we're being good stewards. I don't want to have extra nobody wants extra inventory. And, so we talk about a lot of those kinds of things. And that's one of the things that the partnership has been great about is, really being able to dive deep into all of those aspects of it, and which parts are successful and which parts aren't, and how do we pivot from here. And I feel very comfortable in that if I needed to pivot, I could do something, like there would be a way for me to generate an income. And even in my situation now, being remarried, I'm still the larger earner in our household. And so that requires certain things too, to be careful about certain things and can't just stop doing them. There's an evolution. Yeah.
I never, in my younger scrapbooking days, never imagined that the creativity would lead to me also being the bigger earner in the house. That's just, it's sometimes mind-blowing what's possible when you start your own business and you can see the path in which you can make it grow.
Yeah.
But I never imagined that, because when you're a homemaker, a stay-at-home mom, and you've spent the entire paycheck on scrapbook supplies. And
thanks for the support, Kellee.
Yeah. My pivot back into the art world was mostly because every time I was published or did something, I got paid in scrapbook supplies, which was nice, but I'm like, I would really like to make something of this. So, but it is beautiful. Also, the online world changed so much that gave us so many more opportunities. And I love that we can keep reinventing it. And even with one thing that I think I've done a little research, because I'm not really afraid of a recession. If it's happening again, it's happening again.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think that's really cool that I've studied over the past is that when there's a downturn, the thing that people don't stop doing is making for themselves and being comforted by their own, what their hands can do, what their creativity can exude. Because I even looked at the recession and even the depression. There were certain things that never took a downturn. So being in this creative field is, when we still need connection, we still need community, we still need to be creative. I feel like there's just such a, think it brought us through the pandemic. I know I wouldn't have survived through that if it wasn't for what we were able to create amongst us. And even though I know we're all a little tired of online, it's still there. We know we can connect with people across the world.
Yeah, I think that for me, that resonates with me in lots of different ways too. And I think one of the things that I've done the last couple of years, and this was a little bit pre-pandemic, and then just through the last 2 years, is kind of reevaluating, what's working for me, right? Not just for the business, but what is also working for me as a person. And social media, like I try really hard to just ride the waves of it, because there are so many positive things, but there are also so many negative things. So figuring out the ways that we can exist in the space. One of the things that I've been continually trying to do and say is just normalizing that people disappear for a little bit and then come back, and not even disappear, but just take a break, take a break. It's like a second world, really, in so many ways, right? We have a world that we live in our physical homes and our physical local communities. And then we also have a world that we live in that encompasses the literal world, right? Where we can connect with anybody. And I think the shift, our generational shift, and this opportunity to be able to connect with the entire world is both wonderful and ridiculously overwhelming. And, and I know, I mean, you've probably experienced some of this too. I mean, the negativity, the things that people can say, people are just unkind, they, for whatever reason, like that's been also a part. I mean, I think everybody that's online,
time suck.
Just the time suck, just the scrolling, that's another thing I try to say to our community regularly is how long have you been sitting here scrolling that you got to me, and you could have been making something, you could have been making that scrapbook page that you're looking for inspiration for, but you've spent now 2 hours doing that. Yeah. I'm continually trying to navigate that, and I don't have it all figured out whatsoever, but being able to take a step back a little bit for me has been great. And I've hired more people so that I can do that and be able to say, okay, this is distracting me from the other stuff that I actually want to do, and the things that the scrapbook pages that I want to make and the projects that I want to do. It's like a weight. It can feel like a weight.
It is definitely a balance that is taking me a really long time to figure out. Like you, it's like, okay, there has to be a way that we can continue to run the business and be present in our actual lives.
Yes. I think we are a living experiment, right? This is not, no one else this has not existed before. So there's no roadmap. There's nobody that's saying there's lots of people that are saying this is the way to do it.
Right. But I mean, this is a lot of years of figuring it out and learning, and honestly, just learning how to hire people you can trust.
Yep.
Hire people that can take over and exude the same kind of love and energy that you would. Yep. And let your community know that they're part of that whole experience. Yep. Because I have just gotten to that point in the last 2 years where I can't answer customer service questions all day long, because then there's nothing left for me to just show up and be me and give, my energy would be just drained completely. Yep. So I think that's the evolution of the entrepreneur. In our creative space. It's totally. We did all the things. You got hooked up with a great manufacturer, a company that can help run all of that kind of stuff. But when it actually comes to showing up and being present, even if it's online or if it's in person, how are we going to do that if we don't have other people to take over parts of the journey?
Yeah, 100%. And that was slow. I mean, that was really slow for me too. So like I said, I think I did probably 10 years by myself. And then I had hired a nanny for Anna, my daughter that was born in 2009. I hired a nanny. She was getting ready to go back to school. And I was like, now I really like having you here. Maybe there's some other work for you to do. And so she ended up not going to, or not becoming a dental hygienist, which is what she was going to do, and started working in my office with me and doing a little bit of office work and then still doing nannying. And then, she's worked for me now for 10 years. She's the boss. She's the boss of me.
That's
you got a boss of you. You got to have a boss of you.
I had someone who was my virtual assistant, who became my executive virtual assistant. And then just this fall, I was like, Lisa, can you just be the boss now? And I literally gave her the COO position and said, you tell me what I need to do and make it all run, because we're creative brains. And when we have someone who can run things operational, the amount of creativity I can
you see me, I'm just nodding
changes everything. But I do recognize that there's a process in building your business to a point where financially that makes sense.
100%. Yes. I mean, all of those things come into play. And even, with Katie, when I first hired her, she was paid very differently than she's paid now. Right. So that there's been an evolution along the way too, of as things have grown, and as the need for additional, we've hired 2 other people now. And so she oversees the other 2 people, and they take over, because I'm not a good people manager either. That's not
I know.
You gotta know your skills, right? In the beginning, you got to do everything. And then you got to be able to how to figure out how to let things go. And that was really hard for me actually for a number of years also, because
Me
I'm
too. Do you
control
feel
freak.
like you're gonna be able to grow your business better now though with the right support now that you're turning things over?
Oh,
Or
for
maybe
sure.
you don't have a desire to continue to grow? I don't know. My ambition is always like reach for the stars, but just it gives space for growth, I
Yeah,
think. That's
space.
the
I
goal.
want just small space for growth. Like I've never, and I don't know if this is part of like we were talking about earlier, you know, when I first started doing this, I mean, I really thought I was going to be, you know, married to the same person for the rest of my life. And I thought that that person was going to be the very traditional, right? Be the breadwinner. I thought I was going to have 5 kids. Like that's really what the vision that I had for my life. And then as that shifted, first with starting to do work stuff and then getting a divorce and then, you know, later on getting remarried and now actually having 5 kids, which is totally bananas to me when I think about it. You know, it's like we just don't know what's going to happen. And you got to just, it's like one foot in front of the other and figuring it out as you go along, I think is so much of the process.
For sure. All right. So on that note, I want to know what I have like a new mantra for the year. Like, what's your big audacious dream? Which spells bad. So how are you gonna be bad? Tell me your big audacious dream. Do you
You know, okay, so this is what I was trying to say before. See, I get sidetracked sometimes when I'm like, oh, where am I? Where am I going with this? So I am not a big audacious dreamer. I am just not. That is like not a, and I don't feel bad about it. It's like it's not a part of my personality. I'm significantly more of a sustainer kind of person. So and slow growth. So for me, like, you know, all of the years of just kind of going along and taking different opportunities and pivoting and change, you know,
Mhm.
being mindful as I've gone along. But I don't like, I am not a conquer the industry, conquer the world kind of person. I'm much more lifestyle focused also. And that actually comes a lot from Aaron, who's my husband now, is he is definitely more of that kind of person. Like, you know, what is your actual life like? And how do you actually spend your time outside of, you know, being in your office all day, which I'm very comfortable right here. This is a nice space. Like, you know,
I know what you
I
mean.
could be here all the time and I could work all the time. But
Me too.
yes, but he is
You know
not
what?
like
Maybe your
that.
big audacious dream doesn't have to be like reach for the stars and make millions of dollars and be on Oprah. What if your big audacious dream is just something even like for me, one of my big dreams is to have a cabin in the woods that I know my family can come to year after year after year after year.
Okay.
And it's
That's
family
fair.
home.
Yes. Okay, good. Okay. Thank you for reframing that for me because as you can tell, I don't have big audacious business dreams. I mean, I would like to continue what I'm doing because I enjoy it and I would like to continue enjoying it. So I would like to normalize stepping back and stepping in and stepping back and stepping in.
Mhm.
That's kind of what my hope is. I would love to, we have a camper van. We got a camper van a couple years ago. So I
Yeah.
would totally love to go, you know, for a couple months even and just do that. Me and Aaron and the dog. So we have to wait a little bit longer because we still have kids that are in the
Yes.
house.
I'm empathizing with you on this. I love the kids. It was fun while they were young, but as they're getting older, it's getting a lot more fun to just go do fun things like the
It's
dream.
completely, we live in a, I mean, I go to bed at 9 o'clock and they don't go to bed until 1 in the morning.
It's
So, and
so
then I get up at 5:30 and nobody, it's 10:54 here. We'll see who's up. There may be no one up right now.
seriously, that's the same. Like, yeah, I relate. We have, well, again, all the way back to 2000 and whatever. Yeah,
I
it's a,
think we're in a similar life phase. Earlier on, I think I did a lot more striving, right? There was more striving, even if I wasn't like, I'm going to take over everything. Like that's never been, I just don't care about that. But I think I wanted to be comfortable and I wanted to have a, you know, a level of success that was a good feeling kind of success,
mhm,
right? Where I was making a difference. I think that matters to me, making a difference in some sort of a way
yeah,
to one person or another. Like it's more about that for me. But I've also been able to, you know, have a successful business that has supported, you know, travel and school for our kids and, you know, that kind of stuff too,
yeah.
which when I say it out loud, I think that I don't want to say congratulate. I don't honor myself enough for what has been built. I think a lot of my time has been spent on like, what's the next, you know, we got to move on to the next thing, right? What's the next thing? What's the next project? What's the next whatever? And so that's something actually that's something I would like to work on. Maybe could that be a big audacious dream is to just like own my own story a little bit more.
Own the fact that you are remarkable and you've made something
Yes.
incredibly remarkable.
Thank
And I
you.
do love how you said is that sometimes the big business dream is how many people you get to serve in the process.
Yeah.
And when you have good income goals, you know that there's financial security for your family. You like you, it's like, oh my goodness, you know, of course my kids didn't have like Harvard University dreams, but their community college was all paid for. They have no debt.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and so when you
Yep.
see those joys, you should absolutely give yourself a huge pat on the back. There's your next there's your just next memory keeping is all the things that building this beautiful business has afforded you and the people that you've hired to be able to have in their life. I mean, like,
Thank you,
that's
Kelly.
pretty
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. I'll take
So
that.
I'm
I'll
going to
take
tell
that.
you my word of the year. My word
Okay,
of
let's
the
hear it.
year was something I thought was cliche, but it's been hitting me like huge. My word of the year is love.
Mm.
And it's because I'm learning on new levels what love means. And it's really quite powerful. And, it's something that I've put big barriers up for so many years to protect myself. Even with like my husband and I, we've been married for 24 years now, and he's a very giving man. I mean, we're both strong personalities, but he's a very giving man. And I still will put the barriers up, like, gotta
Yep.
protect myself. But in this last year, a lot of those layers are coming down. And like, I'm going to pick something like I was thinking about joy and other things. And I'm like, nope, love. And love might be my word of the year for the rest of my life. But
I
I
think
have
it's so
been,
interesting. I love that. Love. I love love. Again, I think that you and I, like I said, are in similar phases in our lives too. Just like you were saying, I've felt over the last couple of years, a letting go of a layer, right? Like that layers have been shed. Again, whether it's just how I feel about myself, my level of comfort in whatever my own weird stuff in my head is, there's just been, shifts of things that I cared about before that I don't care about anymore. And that I think there's a lot of growth in that. But I also wanted to say, I think most years I haven't picked a word that a lot of people have picked. And so this year picking joy, like there's a lot of people that pick joy, probably like there's a lot of people that pick love, but I don't discount at all the power in your own life, right? It doesn't matter what anybody else is picking. It doesn't matter if it feels like it's a generic word. It's more about you and what is happening in your own life and what are the reasons why you picked that word and how is that going to work? How is that going to work its way, into you over the course of the year? Because you picking love is different than, a 30-year-old who picks love. Like their experience and probably their focus is maybe something a little bit different just because they don't have the same life experience that we've
right.
had, right? Up until this point.
Would you say maybe sometimes the word picks us?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Some years I have I've been very straightforward where I'm like 100% I know what this I am picking this word. And there are other years where the words just keep ticking in your head, right? Of like, wait, you should pick me, you should pick me, you should pick me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's scary.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really fun.
And it's cool because if you are mindful of the word throughout the year, you really do see how much actually manifests from it, like really shows up in your life.
Yeah.
I remember the year that I picked abundance was the first year that my business went over 6 figures.
It's awesome.
And the year that I picked change was a year that we moved from one place to another and lots of change happened. So in other words, my point being is your one little word has made a big difference in my life, and probably almost everyone who's listening knows that it's so important.
It's made a big difference for me personally too. And I think that this gets back to the way that we work or the work that we do and always trying to keeping the focus on the things that we really love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the parts of the businesses that we really love and the projects that bring us the most joy. Like that for me, I mean, I have, 12 going on my 12th year of an album that has every single month where I've written something down or I've done something related to my word. And so for me in December of each year, I go back and I look at January and I see, oh, these are the intentions that I wrote down. This is the things that I was hoping for myself this year. And I'm able to then like flip through the album. If somebody wants to see them, you can see them on YouTube too. I do an end of the year flip through just to see what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Where then I'm like reading back over the course of the whole year of what did I learn and how did I grow this year? Or did I even like this word? This end up being a word that I hated? Like that happens sometimes. Or, that it's like a word that I'm like, I just don't really connect with this word, which I'm always like, just change your word if it's not,
Yeah.
manufactured timelines of 1 year, right? Like I think you can learn something from every single word though. So that's definitely my core perspective.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me, Allie. I could probably talk to you for another hour or two because we have so much in common.
Well, let me know if you want to chat, Kelly. Just reach out.
I would be happy to do it again, and we'll probably need to bring you back on again on the podcast.
Have another check-in.
Have another check-in. Have another moment of commiserating the ups and downs of and beautiful life that having our own business can bring to us. So
yes, 1
million%.
And
where can everybody find you, Allie? I believe you have 2 Instagram accounts, one for you personally.
That's which is just at Allie Edwards. Yep. And then the other one is the business one is at Allie Edwards Design Inc. And that's the one where we post more like project related stuff or, promotional things, what's happening in product and project land. And then my personal one is really there have been years where I've shared lots of scrapbook stuff on there, and then it's the last couple of years it's been more just pictures, and sometimes I'm there and sometimes I'm not.
That's why I know why all about Simon and his Star Wars.
That's right. Lots of Simon on there. And actually I did a bunch of stories. Yeah, I mean, this will probably come later, but just yesterday I did a bunch of stories. So I kind of go in like waves. I'm like, yeah, I feel like chatting. And then just like in life, right? I feel like talking today. Tomorrow, I don't feel like talking.
Thank you so much for joining me, and I appreciate you so much.
Thanks, Kellee. You're the best.